is the forum for those folks running for the selectmen. As you know, well, I'm Chris Joyce, not that that matters much, but the town election is May 21st at the community center. And so to give Harwich voters a way to know the 3 candidates who are running for the 2 selectmen seats, we've invited the League of Women Voters of Cape Cod area to moderate this forum. Today, we're very fortunate to have Joan Craig, who lives in Chatham, to lead this forum. And I'll now turn this over to Joan.
Good evening. Good evening to all of you. There are some more seats here if you want to come over. My name, as mentioned, is Joan Craig, a member of the League, and I do live in Chatham, so I have watched and listened and read, but I am not voting, so just to keep that clear. The League is a nonpartisan political organization of men and women that encourages the informed and active participation of citizens in government and influence public policy through advocacy and education. This forum, which we do actually all over the Cape, is part of our ongoing voter education efforts to help voters make informed decisions at the upcoming election in Harwich. We hope that in the course of this program you will learn more about the candidates and what they hope to do for Harwich. There are 2 forums tonight. The first, as mentioned by Chris, is the Board of Selectmen, which will last approximately an hour and 15 minutes. There are 3 candidates running for 2 seats. The second is for school committee, which will last approximately 1 hour. I'm sorry, approximately 1/2 hour. There are 2 candidates running for 1 seat in that election. Each candidate tonight will have up to 2 minutes, and I say up to 2 minutes because I've told them all, if you don't need it, don't use it, because then we can get more questions in, right? But up to 2 minutes for opening statements. The order of presentation was determined by lottery. Each person will then give up to 2 minutes to respond to written questions posed by the audience. You may also use your time, gentlemen, to rebut another candidate's previous comment or to clarify or add to a previous comment that you have made. The timers, would you raise your hands, please? We'll hold up a 30-second sign followed by a stop sign. If they speak after the stop sign, I will allow them, as I've told them, to finish their sentence as long as it's not 40 words long. Otherwise, I'm going to cut them off. And I'll move on to the next speaker. Members of the audience, as you know, may submit more than 1 question. Please write carefully. If we can't read it, we can't say it. So it should be issue-oriented. You may direct your questions to 1 candidate. However, I will be asking all of them. I'll give them the opportunity to answer as well. Raise your hand if you haven't sent a question, or if during the evening you have a question, raise your hand, and then can I see the runners? Is there a runner right here? They have cards they'll give to you, and then they'll bring them up to our panel right here, who'll then give them to me. Candidates will have 2 minutes to respond to the questions. Closing statements, they'll have an hour and a half. I'm sorry. I've started already. I told the gentleman I am on Europe time. I got in at 12:30 this morning. So if I am a little flaky, that's why I'm still over there. But I meant a minute and a half for closing remarks. Please, as mentioned by Chris, turn your cell phones off. I'm asking you to hold your applause, even though you may love what you've heard. Hold it to the end, because then we can get more questions in. And if someone comes in late, if somebody could whisper to them the same thing, please. They all received this information ahead of time. I met with them earlier. We did a little poll. We're going to start now with Michael MacAskill. Michael.
Good evening. Michael MacAskill. I'm actually running for re-election. I'm a sitting selectman now. I have 48 years in the town of Harwich. I've been blessed with 3 daughters that I've raised in the town. My parents have a combined 57 years of service to the town of Harwich and have retired and living on their retirement. still in the town of Harwich, and hoping to stay in the town of Harwich. So town meeting's message was loud and clear. It's the same message that I've been driving home for the last 3 years. Put on the brakes, stop spending, and stop bringing large debt exclusion projects forward. Like many of you, I voted against the Lower County Road project this year, and I also voted against the town budget. I need the rest of the board to get behind me on this and send the message to town administration to stop spending money. You cannot simply create affordable housing. You have to make the town that we live in affordable to live in. And that means stop raising taxes. I run for re-election because I'm concerned about the future of the town of Harwich, about our ability to sustain a well-rounded, affordable community that is thriving. I hope to continue to be the voice of all residents. I ask difficult questions and hold the fiscal line. Time to stop spending money. Most of you in this room know me to be an honest, hardworking, and selectman. We need to create real solutions together as a community to keep young people here, have thoughtful growth, and take care of our aging population. Over the last 4 years, I've worked diligently for the town I love, spoken my mind even when it was not the most popular decision, and made fact-based decisions. I understand that there's a lack of confidence in our local government right now, but I will continue to push for change. I'm committed to fiscal responsibility, effective and efficient decision-making that includes public input, is transparent, and sustainable.
Thank you. Next, we have Tom Sherry.
Hello. First of all, I want to thank the League of Women Voters for putting this together. It's a great night that we could communicate with the town. Communication with the townsfolk is important. We need to talk. There needs to be a conversation between the people, the voters of town, and the town government. I was not born here, but of all the places I could have chose to live in, I chose Harwich. Me and my wife decided that this was the place we want to finish our work days through and end up retiring here. So we chose this because we love Harwich. Same theme. Thomas Jefferson once wrote, "A little rebellion now and again is a good thing." Okay? And I was proud. I was very proud of the way the people of Harwich responded at the town meeting. You know, a little discontent, a little say, we're kind of fed up with that. It was wonderful that the town came forward and expressed that to the powers what be. So all I can say is God bless Harwich. And again, this town has a big heart. It really does. That's why we chose to live here. When faced with adversity, when a wrong needs to be righted, the town seems to just get together and bond, and we try. Sometimes we don't succeed, but we try to right the wrongs. We do. We voted for the town budget. I was one of the ones standing up there, well, as Michael, with my little thing voting against the town budget. Didn't want it, but we try. We don't succeed all the time, but we try. And I think it's important that the message was sent to the powers that be that we're kind of tired of the taxes. We're tired of everything rising, rising, rising. We need to put the brakes on it, as Michael said, that it's time to stop spending.
Thank you. And Steve.
Thanks very much to the League of Women Voters and to the Voter Information Committee for putting this forum together for us. My name is Steve Ford. I grew up in the town of Harwich. I went to the Harwich school system, as well as my brothers and sister did attend as well. And my family's been involved in the town for a very long time. My grandfather was a selectman from 1962 to 1973. My mother was a teacher in the school system for a long time and a librarian at Brooks Free Library. My wife was on the library board for a number of terms, and I served as the president of the Harwich Historical Society. My brother Michael, who you all know, has served as town moderator for longer than we all can remember. So we have a long history in the town, and I've had the great opportunity to have moved away but come back to the town that I love. And what I'd like to be able to do is to help the town with the background that I have. So my background is, my first job, I started working out of college for Senator Abraham Ribicoff in Washington, D.C. on his staff. I then came onto the staff of Congressman Gary Studs, running his Cape and Islands office and then running the whole district offices. So I had a good background and experience in government during that 8-year period of time. After I finished up working in public service, I went into the banking business. I worked for a number of major financial institutions around the country, the last of which was the Bank of New York Mellon, where I worked to provide financing and structuring of financing for cities, towns, counties, and states all over the country. And I hope to bring that background and capability to the town to help it, find new ways to approach all of its goals and objectives.
Thank you, and I have to apologize to both Steve and Tom. When we did the poll on who would be speaking first, second, and third, I messed up. But as of now, I have a grid here, and the questions will be asked as they should have spoken, my error, which will be first Michael, then Steve, Michael, then Steve, then Tom. The next question will be rotating, and I must apologize, but we'll do it the way, you're all going to answer the same questions, but that was my error, and I apologize. So going on to the first question. To solve and relieve summer parking in Harwich Port, is this a charge of an ad hoc committee? What recommendations has the committee made that seem to have substance? We'll start with Michael.
It is a ad hoc committee, and that the biggest one was putting the employee parking in the TD Bank parking lot, and the chamber, actually Cindy from the chamber and a member of the committee, negotiating with Cape Cod 5 as well to remove a certain amount of cars into the bank parking lot. We're also putting some traffic signs, international parking signs on the roads facing into the municipal lot.
Thank you. Steve?
Yeah, as Mike said, it is an ad hoc committee. There was some real concern expressed by the residents on Bank Street, which was quite valid. They felt that they didn't have enough input into the committee's deliberations. But I think now, after having heard the concerns of the people on Bank Street, the committee has come up with a solution for this year, which is quite a good one. And as Mike said, both Cape Cod 5 and TD Bank have agreed to let those lots be used for parking as well. So I think we, at this moment, have an interim solution, although a continued study needs to be done to figure out what we're going to do about parking in Harwich Port. No question about that.
And Tom?
Yes, it is an ad hoc committee. After concern was expressed at one of the Board of Selectmen meetings, I took the time to walk up and down Bank Street talking to residents that I found in the neighborhood and asked them their opinion, and they were thoroughly against it. They did not want their little neighborhood to be a parking lot. And I think the solution to have the TD Bank parking lot is a much more viable solution, even to some of the business owners in town where the parking of their employees may have been put to Bank Street. They were all against it as well, because how are they going to get their employees from their different businesses up to Bank Street? And that would just increase the traffic at all hours of the night in a quiet little neighborhood. So I think the TD Bank in the downtown area would be the best solution.
Thank you. The operating budget passed by only 34 votes out of 500 cast. What does this mean to you, and what changes can you bring forth to administration to decrease the taxpayers' financial burdens, I think, but I don't know what it says. I'm sorry. Steve?
Starts with me.
Yes.
You know, it was kind of a surprising town meeting that we had, and frankly, I think somewhat disheartening, you know, to see not only a large majority of the people showing great concern about the operating budget, but also showing what appeared to be not enough background knowledge about it in order to make a conscious decision about where we ought to head. And to watch two of our selectmen stand up and vote against our operating budget, it's very disheartening. You would think that all the period of time that leads up to town meeting, all the meetings that our budget folks have, that we could have a unified voice on town meeting floor, an informed voice, and we could have a good deal more information provided to the people of the town in order for them to understand why the operating budget was what it was. There's a number of things that I'm going to propose as we go along here relative to how we can create a solution to some of these issues that the town has, and I'll hold those off until later, but that's my comments on the operating budget.
Tom?
When something's wrong, it's wrong, okay? And if the selectmen stood up and voted against it, and the FinCom stood up and voted against it, then there's a problem. It just, things need to be pulled back. If we don't have, 2 minutes is not enough time to get into the whole budget, but there are just a lot of problems that need to be addressed, and there needs to be time to brought out. But a lot of these things were not brought forth in a timely fashion before the election, before the town meeting rather, that should have been done weeks, if not months ahead of time, that were not brought in time. And there I point fingers at the town administration.
Michael?
The town budget's gone up, in 5 years, it's gone up 38%, and that's just the town operating budget. And the town administrator uses Proposition 2.5 as a tool, and every year we have a budget base, and we start at that base and we use Proposition 2.5 and a little bit of growth to increase the budget. This year, in addition, the town administrator put into the budget 2% on a rooms tax that we hadn't voted yet, or town meeting hadn't voted yet, that it had just gotten passed. So that was his balanced budget. Until administration, or until a more unified Board of Selectmen, but more important, until Finance Committee starts to question what the budget is made up of, we're not going to be able to do anything about it, because it has been voted unanimously, or close to unanimously, by Finance Committee with very little questions for the 4 years that I've been on the Board of Selectmen. And this year it was voted unanimously again, and while I was away this year, the budget was passed 4-0 in the Board of Selectmen. I came back, asked for reconsideration, and then it failed. It was 3-2 on the second vote. But we need to get a finance committee in place that is going to ask tough questions. And the Board of Selectmen asked for the rooms tax. When we got rid of the rooms tax, that represented 0.5% of the overall $71 million budget. And we couldn't find 0.5%, or I should say administration couldn't find 0.5%. So as Stephen said, we need to be more unified. It's tough to be unified when you have a town administrator that is using 2.5 as a tool and growth just to raise the number every year with no consideration of lowering the budget.
Thank you. The next question starts with Tom. On a scale of 1 to 10, what is your assessment of Harwich's fiscal health? And if low, or whatever your number is, what would you do to raise it?
Okay, good question. Fiscal health-wise, I'd put us somewhere around a 6 or 7, okay? Some things have to be spent. Money has to be spent to run a town. You need services. You need the police department. You need the fire. You need snow plowed in the wintertime. The things you have to spend money on have to be there. But then that's the needs. Then we have to worry about the wants. And what do things like wants, and we'll bring up, because it was a big one at town meeting, we'll bring up the pet cemetery, okay? That was a want, it was not a need. And the town was smart enough to get together and say, okay, we don't need this. It'd be nice if we had it, but we don't need this. We need to really pick apart our wants versus our needs. And that would help our health. The other thing that I really would want to look at would be the school budget, because that's the biggest dollar item on our budget, and I really want to see if the population of school children is actually, which it is, it's diminishing. So if we have less school children in our schools, why is the school going up?
Thank you. Michael, yes.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Yes. On a scale of 1 to 10, what is your assessment of Harwich's fiscal health? If low, or whatever your number is, what would you do to raise it?
So on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd give it a 7, and I would say that we're fast approaching a AAA bond rating. This is assuming that we want to continue to let the younger people and the aging population to leave. So I can answer that in a couple ways. On paper and on a chart, we look good. We're putting money in stabilization. We end up with a certain amount of free cash every year. But we also have a population in Harwich that over 55%, or 55% of the population is over 60. And 55% of the homes, or over 50% of the homes, are second homes. So we're not doing anything to reduce taxes and to build on that. I think that we need to start looking at what we want our community to be, have some economic development where it makes sense to lower the tax rate, continue to try and get the AAA bond rating, but start looking at the amount of people that are leaving the community, the younger people. It has a ripple effect. The school system, as Tom just mentioned, and their budget, we're losing kids. As the decline in population, it costs more to run the school. So I think we need to look at the effect on affordable housing, the effect on the tax, and the effect on our seniors and our younger people leaving the community.
Thank you. Steve?
Yeah, I don't think I'd score it on a scale of 1 to 10, even though the question asked that. I think I'd score it the way that the professionals have scored the town, which is by Standard & Poor's. Standard & Poor's rates this town AA+, which is a very high rating for any town. We'd love to be AAA. I think we're on our way to doing that. We're doing some things, and Mike and the board are working on trying to get us there with various looking at the budget and cutting the budget in certain areas that doesn't impact the services that are so important to the town. But Michael made a very important point. You know, a large chunk of our population is summer population. They come down, they use our facilities, they use our roads, they use our all the toilets in the houses, they're going to use the new sewer system. I think we have to find a way to have some of that burden rest upon those folks who come here on vacation. And one of those ways of doing that is the 2%. I think we need to think about that 2% and perhaps implementing it and using it solely as a stabilization fund for the new wastewater treatment and sewer facility. That's one idea. We also have to look for other sources of revenue, grant money, other types of things that we can do, and good, sound fiscal management. So that's my thoughts.
Thank you. The next question is going to start with Michael. In light of the vote to return the land on Queen Anne Road back to the Select Board, what are your thoughts, plans for its future use?
I don't have any plans for its future use. There was some talk that it would be sold and put back on the tax roll. We first have to cross the hurdle. Town meeting spoke. They spoke loud and clear. I support town meeting's decision on what they want to do with it. It first has to get turned back over to the Board of Selectmen by the Cemetery Commission. And then I imagine we'll have a conversation about it. But I don't have any plans for that property yet, but we'll look at anything that the group wants or the town wants.
Steve?
I have to agree with Mike on this. You know, I don't have any particular idea as to what we should do with the property. There's all kinds of debates about what the value is. Some of the values that have been suggested are you know, not realistic. But the town voted, and the selectmen, I think, should follow the will of the town. Now, obviously, as Mike said, the Cemetery Commission has to vote to give it back to the town as well. So we'll see what happens in that regard, but I don't have any specific idea for the use of the property.
Tom?
I have a couple. One, we have lobstermen in town, and they have no place to store their lobster pots throughout when it's off-season. Why can't we rent that land, little parcels of it, to the lobster guys to store their lobster traps there? This way we're getting a rental fee from that land, which is town property to start with, and at least we'll recoup some of the money that was spent on that land, which is one option. Another option, if all the dog lovers out here, if you want it for the dogs, then by all means, fence it in and make a dog run. You take your dogs to Thompson Park, they're running, you know, here, there, and whatever, either on the leash or if they run free. But if you have a fenced-in area for a dog run, that would be another option I would think of. To this way, you could run your pets in a closed-in area safely, and especially people living in apartments who have no yards or anything to walk their pets or run their pets, this way they get to run free. So either some way that we could use it for the town, or I would prefer the lobster pot rental, because at least the town will make some money back.
Thank you. The next question is going to start with Steve. There's a lot of questions here that are slightly different, but again, it's along the budget, talking about the budget. So one of them is with respects to the operating budget separately to the school budget. Do you want to start addressing something like that and maybe be specific? They're asking about changes or increases, controlling, spending. I'm reading all of these. Taxpayers' concerns. I know you've hit on some of it, but if you could all hit a little more on, if someone asked you right now with regards to the budget, your number one issue, and I know some of you brought it up in your opening statement, but let's hear it again. First with Steve. Thank you.
Well, I think one thing that we saw in town meeting and you see in the selectmen's meetings is a real void of knowledge that the people in the town seem to have relative to the budget. I've done a little research, looked at other towns, Chatham, Orleans, as to how they approach the budget process and how they educate the people in the town. And while I think we have a tremendous staff, you know, I think our finance director is top-notch. I do think we could do a much better job in educating the people in the town before we got to town meeting floor as to what the budget looks like, what are the needs that we have, where are the expenditures. I mean, you know, we had a situation on town meeting floor where we couldn't even get an answer as to what our debt service was, our annual debt service. And all that does is just erode the confidence that people have in what the actual budget numbers are. So I think, you know, while there's many things we can look at relative to the types of things that Mike and Tom have said on where we need to make some cuts or look at maybe not doing certain things. More importantly is making sure the people of this town understand the budget, understand what we're trying to do, and why we're doing the things we're doing. And the only way we can do that is if the selectmen get together and work much closer with the town administration to present it in a way that the people can understand it.
Thank you. Tom.
Okay, this is more of the school budget than anything else. Did I understand the question? Is more about school budget,
No, there's all
general budgets?
general budget, but it
Okay.
also mentions school budget versus the full town budget, so
Okay, so
any
again,
and all of the above.
okay, so again, the highest ticket item on the budget is the schools, okay? And I look at administration, and I'm not picking on anybody. I just think we need qualified people. And again, I don't want to pick on anybody, but the thing is, after town meeting, when Mr. Carpenter could not answer what it cost to put a student through school here, the next morning, coincidentally, I went to school, I talked to my superintendent, just met him in the coffee room, just, you know, unplanned, and I said, oh, by the way, what's it cost to send a student to school here? And he looked at me and said, from what town? And he started rattling off from each town, whether it be Wareham, Sandwich, wherever town that feeds Upper Cape Tech. He gave me the figures, and he said, and the average cost, and he gave me the figures. That's a superintendent, okay? And I do not have confidence if our school superintendent, who just went through the budget meeting for his school, did not know these figures at his fingertips.
Thank you. Michael.
We have to start by removing the tax and spend mentality. I mean, I think that that's where we've gotten. And I think the budget is presented to the Board of Selectmen by the Finance Committee, by the town administrator, and then it's sent to the Finance Committee. In other towns like Dennis, if you want 2 new reams of paper, you better prove you used all of last year's paper. They question everything, and they have a low tax rate because of that. We have a mentality that we have a starting point. Last year's budget is the starting point, and that we tax 2.5% plus a percentage of growth from there. A 5-year projection puts us over $80 million with that current thinking. So that's one. Second is town administrator this year, when we challenged his budget, pointed to collective bargaining and capital projects and the debt service on capital projects as the 2 drivers in the increase in the budget. So that tells us that we've done a tremendous amount of work in Harwich over the last 6 years. It's time to stop. It's time to take a break. It's time to let some debt drop off without backfilling it. We're all plagued with the wastewater. We have to do that. We were sued. There was a stay. We have to do it. So calculating in what that actual figure is and having real numbers and not letting more capital projects come forward at this time is a good start. Zero-based budgeting. 2 years ago, when I was the chairman, we presented a budget message to the town administrator asking for a 2% increase, not 2.5%. And then we agreed in that budget message to go to zero-based budgeting. So let's start at the floor and let everyone figure out what they need in their budget, not add to the current budget. And we seem to have an inability to say no, and we seem to have an inability to start at zero. In reviewing the budget this year, I went line item by line item, and I went back 5 years. We have line items that have never changed. So they're just plugged in numbers. Anyone that does a budget can figure out how to lose money out of a budget.
Thank you. These are two questions that I'm going to put together. One is with regards to the lack of female presence on boards such as yours, and how could you help diversify that? The other is, so it's going to be two parts. As of March, there are 28 vacancies on boards and committees. The new fiscal year may bring many more through term expirations. What would you do to encourage residents, and my assumption would be female also, more female residents, to apply to serve on these boards? We'll start with Tom.
Oh, okay. Well, we've had females in the past. Janelle Brown's here, former selectman. Sandy Brown, I'm sorry, Sandy Hall. Sorry,
I think they're talking about the future, sir.
Okay, but I'm saying we've had them in the past, and I would go back to them and say, why did they run? What gave them, because this is definitely not a male, it's not an old boys club up here. Anytime there's a female, we have a chairman right now. Julie Kavanaugh is the chairman of the board now. It's not an old boys club. Anyone's involved. If you want to get involved in town politics, by all means, please get involved in town politics. How to entice them in, I don't know how, to say, hey, come on and be a selectman. I don't know, why are we doing it, okay? Because we want to get involved in town politics, so how do you make a female want to get involved in town politics versus a male? I don't think there's really an answer to that question.
Thank you. Michael.
I'm going to lean on the voter information committee.
There you go.
We have, they do a wonderful show, and they have chairmen from different committees come in and explain what it represents. But education. I've been lucky to serve on the Board of Selectmen with Linda Sabula, Janelle Brown, Julie Kavanaugh, and it was a very, very well-balanced board with Julie and Janelle. You can't make people run. I think it's an inviting atmosphere. Bi-weekly, we announce what we have in vacancies for committees. Don Howell and I are on the interview committee. It's a very friendly environment. We push committees to be friendly to the public, friendly to themselves, and to be involved. And I think we've had great luck filling committees, and I think we've had great luck diversely filling committees. I think we have a lot of women on the committees, and we certainly need to get some women on the Board of Selectmen.
Thank you. Steve.
Yeah, I think some of you may recall that we're in the last forum, that was, one of my first concerns that I expressed, that Julie was leaving the board and there was no female running for the board. And I have a particular interest, having been brought up by a single mom and then having 3 daughters. I think in some ways we might want to think about having a minimum, percentage of people on the board, on the various boards being women. I don't know whether we can do that or not, but it might be a worthwhile initiative. I think Mike's right. The Voter Information Committee has done yeoman's work in trying to get to people of the town to be more interested in what's going on. I can tell you that if I am lucky enough to be elected selectman, I'm going to reach out to people across this town, men and women, but also encourage women in particular to be part of the process and encourage them to run for office, and I will commit to doing that. So that's my thoughts.
Thank you. The next question is about development. And we're going to start with Michael. Need more? Not enough? Too much? What about natural space?
I'm a huge proponent of natural space and conservation land. It's equally as important for our new wastewater program, because every piece of open space we have is an offset to having to sewer, which is going to save the town a lot of money. Too much development, enough development, I think we need to get a handle on affordable housing. And by affordable housing, I would like to propose housing or work on housing for people that live here. Work on housing for our seniors, work on housing so the young people can stay, but work on local initiative programs and local housing. That's the only development that I'm focused on. You can't stop people from buying lots that are for sale and building houses, or buying houses and tearing them down. But we as a town need to focus on creating affordable housing so that we can have some workers here, and so that our young people and seniors can continue to live here.
Thank you. Steve?
Pretty much in sync with Mike on this. The most important initiative we should have in town relative to development is conservation of the land that we have. And I think there's been, tremendous commitment to that in the town of Harwich. I don't think you can just say development, no development. It's not that easy. As Mike said, people want to live in this town, and they'll come and buy homes and, either develop new houses or potentially add on to existing ones. I just think controlled development is wise. We have to look at, how we allow certain developments to evolve, and but with an eye continuously to the fact that, we live in an environment that has a sole source aquifer here, and we have to be very aware of the environment that surrounds us.
Thank you. Tom?
The town, town lands are town lands. The problem is that there are a lot of parcels in town that we don't know who owns them. Okay, I think we need to start going back through the tax records and through the records of the town to see where those parcels are actually owned or titled to, and if they are untitled, then the town needs to reclaim them as, in payment of the back taxes, and then now that becomes land that we can use to develop. So if you turn around and use those lands for development, that gives us an option of affordable housing, whether you do a habitat home or low-income housing. We have, I think Michael was starting to allude to this, we have waitresses, waiters, people who work at Stop and Shop, people who are landscapers. They work 2-3 jobs a week, and yet they can't afford to stay here. So when we're talking about like affordable housing and low-income housing, these people they're taxpayers. They want a place to stay in town, but we need to find a place for them to stay here, because they are the ones who are cutting our lawns, they're the ones who are bagging our groceries, they're the ones who are bringing us our steak and our drinks or whatever. These are people that we need in town to provide services for us. So these are people that we really need to respect and say, hey, let's find a place for these people to stay in town. They shouldn't have to be moving out of town if they're working and paying taxes in town.
Thank you. The next question, and we'll start with Steve. What about changing the name to Select Board rather than Board of Selectmen, as some other towns are doing?
Well, I think we did that. So. I think it's a smart thing to do. We should be as gender neutral as we possibly can. So I think it's a good decision.
Tom?
Semantics, if you, what's in a name, okay. If that's what the town wants, then by all means, that's what the town should have. I have no objection one way or the other. I think Select Board is more generic, which is fine, and no problem with that.
Michael?
I agree with Stephen and Tom. Linda Sabula, former selectman, brought the petition article before town meeting and gave a very compelling case on why it should be changed. So I can't not agree.
The next question is starting with Tom. How can the Finance Committee be chosen differently?
Well, that's not up to me. That's up to his brother. When they're appointed on the board, and I think, first of all, you need people to express interest in the Finance Committee. Okay, I served on the Finance Committee this past year, and I was very fortunate to do that, and, you know, thank the town for letting me be there. But the important thing is, you need to express willingness to serve on these committees. Okay, the Finance Committee is one of the few committees that actually have night meetings. A lot of the committees in town have meetings during the day where a lot of the working people can't get and become members of these committees. But if you express interest to Michael Ford, he would consider anyone. But I think we need people, we need teachers, we need workers, we need business people, we need the better expansion of people that we can get on this board, the better the town's gonna be. So we just need people to come forward and say, I want to be on the board, you know, on the Finance Committee, and express interest, and then hopefully be assigned.
Thank you. Michael?
I'm going to blame Michael Ford as well. Last year's budget process, we were short 4 Finance Committee members for most of the budget process. And I think, to Tom's point, we need people that want to do it. But I think we need to actively, and I think you've all heard my message on the budget, we need to actively recruit mean forensic accountants. I think we need to go after and look at people. But, you know, these committees are, or this not being a committee, but Michael Ford's appointments, if he doesn't get anyone interested, he can't appoint them. And usually, and I can remember when committees, we would have 2 open spots, and we would beg people to be on them. So you need people that want to do it, and if there's only 2 choices for 2 seats, then he's really got no choice but to pick the 2 people for the 2 seats. So,
Thank you.
recruitment.
Thank you. Steve?
Yeah, this question, I think, stems from a commentary that was made on the floor of town meeting, which frankly I found quite distasteful, because the people that serve on the Finance Committee are very dedicated people. They care about this town, they care about the budget, and they work as hard as they can to deliver for the people of the town. Now, you know, could we strive to perhaps get people a little more qualified? I guess we could, but I gotta say, there's an awful lot of people on that committee that are very well qualified. Come from business backgrounds, small business, larger business. So you know, and of course I'm a little biased here because of Michael, but my brother Michael, you know, I think he's done a wonderful job selecting these people. And as I said, I think that the, you know, Tom, you got appointed as well, so, you know,
There you
there you go. There we go. So I think, you know, this is a small town, and we do a lot of volunteering. You know, I could say one of the reasons I'm running for selectman here is because I'm much more qualified on the financing side than the other candidates. But, you know, these guys have both put the time in, they both care about the town as much, so that shouldn't be the only decision. So.
Okay, thank you. The next question, starting with Michael. After the old firehouse is demolished, would you support the sale of that property? The questioner says the money from the sale could be used to purchase a property that is in a sensitive area that is in danger of development. Your comments?
You know, last town meeting, we passed selling fire station on Bank Street. So I would look at a proposal, is the answer to that. I'm not sure what portion of that could be sold, because I know some of that was traded as part of the site plan for the new fire station. So I don't have the answer to that, so I can't say that we can sell the building as a whole. But certainly it's something that we should look at, and maybe put an RFP out for proposals to see what we could do with it.
Thank you. Steve?
There again, I mean, I don't have any suggestion as to what we might do with it. As far as proceeds helping us to purchase land that is sensitive, I think we've got a lot of regulations on the environmental side to protect sensitive properties. You saw that the other night in the town meeting relative to pieces of land that were going to go into the Affordable Housing Trust that had vernal pools. I think we pay very close attention to the various properties across the town. But at this point, I'm you know, don't have any particular opinion on what we should do in that building.
Thank you. Tom?
Well, I think the state regulations tell us that, you know, certain parcels of land in town, we can't develop anyway. They are sensitive and we can't touch them. So, you know, whether we own them or somebody else owns them that we can't build on or they can't build on, we shouldn't have to worry about running after and buying these properties. There's state regulations in place to control that. If we do, and I don't know, back to Michael's, I don't know how much of that we can actually sell off, but if we could sell off that and use that for something else or turn that land into town land for a different, repurpose it, that would be fine. But as far as to sell that and buy other lands, I think that the state and federal regulations are going to determine that we can't build anyway, or, sensitive land.
Thank you. The next question will begin with Steve. What can you say about the blue economy and our fisheries?
Could you repeat that?
Yes. What can you say about the blue economy and our fisheries?
Well, I'm unfamiliar with the term blue economy.
Thank you. So was I.
So I'll say that. I had the good fortune when I worked for Congressman Gary Studd serving as his representative on the National Marine Fisheries Council. So I did have a great deal of exposure to the fishing industry. However, having been away from town for 20 years, I'm not as familiar with the fishing industry here in Harwich, which I obviously am intending to get myself much more up to speed. Certainly we have, 3 tremendous harbors here in town, and 2 of them are dominated by the fishing industry, or at least have a good portion of it, the fishing industry. So I think the fact that, we've done such great work with Saugatucket and the piers at Witchmere is a great effort to support the fishing industry in the town of Harwich.
Thank you. Tom?
Okay, I'll plead ignorance as well. Blue industry, I'm not 100% sure what they're looking for, but as far as, the fisher guys in town, a lot of them are regulated by federal regulations about as far as catch, how much they can catch, and how far they can go out. So those regulations, I'm not 100% sure what the question is asking me. I know we support our fishing people with dredging at Allen Harbor. We just did Saugatucket, as just mentioned. That's a livelihood. That's one of the main livelihoods of town is the fishing industry. I'm familiar with most of the lobstermen in town, a lot of the charter fishermen I know. It's just, they're great guys, and they're Harwich. So those guys I support.
Thank you. Michael?
I think we're going to strike out on the blue economy.
Okay.
As far as the fishing industry goes, I think the fishing industry is in dire straits at this point. I think as it relates to the environment, I know that nitrogen is causing our eelgrasses to die off. We've got a lot of pollution in our upper estuaries. But the fishing industry as a whole, I think they're robbing Peter to pay Paul at this point. They're getting targeted by the state on when the lobstermen can't put their gear in certain areas for another 3 weeks this year, later than when they could last year. We have a very short season on Cape Cod to make money in that industry, and I think it gets shorter and shorter every year. We've engaged now into buying farm raised fish, so that's taking away from the fishermen's stocks. We have a abundance of seals, and the seals eat a certain amount of fish a day. And those seals, the seal number now is upwards of 60,000 between Nantucket and Provincetown. So I think that there's a lot of things working against the fishing industry, and one of them being the environment.
And I'm not going to put the questioner in an embarrassing situation, but I'm assuming the blue economy is the ocean, perhaps.
No.
No. So do you want to answer?
Yeah, it's anything to do with water. Water is blue.
That's right.
Could be water system, sewage system.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Next question. Town meeting raised issues of subsidizing the cultural center with taxpayers' funds. Do you have a position on how long the taxpayers should subsidize the use of the middle school as a cultural center? Michael?
Well, we're in.
I'm sorry, Tom. My error.
Okay. I think, is Carol here? She was here. Hi, Carol.
Do you want me to repeat the question?
Please.
Town meeting raised issues of subsidizing the cultural center with taxpayer funds. Do you have a position on how long the taxpayers should subsidize the use of the middle school as a cultural center?
I think it's just starting to gain foothold at this point, and I would like to see a little bit more wait and see, maybe another 5 years. More and more classrooms are being rented out. There's more and more programs coming forward. If the kitchen comes through and we could start doing meals there, that would also enhance the monies coming in. I know the Cranberry Festival has the concerts out there during the summer, which is a big plus for the community as well. So I think as a whole, if we leave this for another few years to investigate to see how it's doing, I would go maybe a 5-year look ahead to see how everything's turning out.
Thank you. Michael?
We're in year 2 of a 5-year pilot program. So the Board of Selectmen voted and the conversation happened on town meeting floor 2 years ago. And so we're on a 5-year pilot. As far as the subsidy goes, I think the subsidy is, they put a number of $125,000 in there. We are obligated to pay for the joint septic system between the elementary school and the former middle school. And we've gotten cost quotes to get a new septic system in, to have it be standalone, and it wasn't feasible. We also still owe $250,000 for the roof that we put on the middle school. The cultural center is an interesting thing, and it's already raising, they've already brought in year 2 upwards of $140,000. And Carolyn, I gotta give her a lot of credit. She's, Carolyn and Erica, and now Brian, they've put together quite a program in there, and we have a lot of space in there left to rent. Recreation's using the gym. So we've brought in $140,000. The subsidy that was mentioned on town meeting floor was the $125,000 line item. And if we could get some real numbers, we're not using all that $125,000 for things directly related to the middle school. So I think it's well on its way to covering itself. We decided to give it 5 years. The other important piece of this is it's opened a lot of doors for us, other cultural doors. So now we're involved in the cultural districts. We've been accepted by Mass Cultural Council as one in, I think, 6 towns to be picked for this. So I think the cultural center needs to be looked at a little more broad than the one line item of $125,000 as a subsidy. I don't think it's a subsidy at all.
Thank you. Steve?
I don't view it as a subsidy either. I think it's tremendously exciting what's happened at the Cultural Center. And as Mike said, it's becoming more and more viable on the revenue side as each year passes. I think they originally had a certain period of time, and it was extended 5 years. So, and if you take a look at the ceremony that took place a weekend before last, I believe it was, down at the harbor, where we're going to have artists in the shacks there. It's working in conjunction with the Cultural Center. We all have to remember that this is part of the economic base of this town. The way we approach these cultural developments, I think, will help us immensely as we draw more people into the town, get more people involved in the arts, which is hugely important for this town.
Thank you. The next question will start with Michael. Do you support resurfacing Lower County with available funds, including free cash, but without borrowing any funds?
Can you say that again? I got
Yes.
lost in that.
Do you support resurfacing Lower County Road with available funds, including free cash, but without borrowing any funds?
No. I think Lower County Road needs to be looked at again. And I know that the argument's been made that it is in shambles, I think was one of the words. I think that we need to look at that road and look at the sidewalks and look at who's using them and look at the ADA compliance. But it's my understanding now that it was, the job was put out and a book job was made by somebody that's not even an engineer. So I would need to relook at that and to see what else we're going to sacrifice in town to resurface that. I drive that road a fair amount. I think that we can make, and I'm not an expert on it, and maybe our highway director is more of an expert on this, but I think we can make some modifications to that road without costing the taxpayers in any way $5 million or $4 million.
Thank you. Steve?
No. The town spoke at town meeting, and I think we, have to respond to the way the town voted. I would say that I think Lynn Cooper, our DPW director, has done a tremendous job and worked very hard to convince the people of the town that this was the project and this was the time to do the project. The town voters didn't see fit to do what Link had suggested. I think he'll continue a maintenance program and come back to us with thoughts and ideas about what we should do. But I think the voters have spoken, and I don't think you go around in another direction to try to do what the voters said they don't think we should do.
Thank you. Tom?
Agreed. I've walked that area. I've both driven and walked the area, talked to people who live down along the street, and they're all kind of in agreement that they don't, they're happy that it's a speed bump, that people have to slow down going through that. Driving down it, it's not the shambles that people said it was at town meeting. It needs some work, but not to the tune of $4 million. It's, I think if we re-looked at it and said, okay, which areas actually need to be addressed and hit it, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. If we did go with the full ADA compliance, you're talking about widening the street as well as the sidewalks, moving utility poles back, encroaching on people's property by up to 3 feet. So, take out your fence and your roses because we got to push the street back. I mean, that's a little much to be expected for townsfolk to put up with. So I'm thinking that if we just readdress some of the places where there are definite little divots down there, I think we'd be much better off.
Thank you. The next question, your vision for Harwich Center and Harwich Port going forward. We'll start with Steve.
That's a big challenge. I have lived in both locations. My ancestors built the house I lived in Harwich Center in 1842. So I have a close and very personal relationship with Harwich Center. It used to be quite vibrant, and it has lost a lot of that vibrancy over the last 15 years. I'm not sure what the answer is, how we can draw potential commercial development on that main street. The good thing is there's parking there, which there isn't in Harwich Port on the street, so I mean there's some advantages there. I know that there's the new building that's going to be built, and there's the Harwich Center Initiative, which I'm not sure from what I'm hearing from all the folks on that committee whether they're happy with the new building or not. Certainly with the library having all the work done to that, it's a wonderful continuing addition to Harwich Center. Harwich Port, obviously there's a lot of development going on in Harwich Port. Hopefully the new building gets leased up soon. But there's a lot of people with financial commitment to Harwich Port and the main street and the businesses and jobs there. And as long as it's done in a tasteful and thoughtful way that takes into consideration the people who live year-round in Harwich Port and even in the summertime in Harwich Port, I think we're really making great progress there.
Thank you. Tom?
Well, Harwich Port, biggest issue down there would be the parking. It's a great area, people to walk through, but where are they going to park so they can walk through? That's the biggest issue I can see down there. It's nice. The restaurants are lovely. You could walk down. You could go Dr. Gravity. You could go and just go shopping. And it's a fun area for tourists to go through. But where are they going to park their cars? And I think that's a big issue for there that we really need to deal with. And as far as Harwich Center here, we need to. Need to get rid of the gas station. It's just, people pull into town and they're looking at that gas station. We need to decide what we want it to look like. And this is not my decision. This is going to be according, to the Historical Society and things of that nature, what they want this to look at when people first pull into town. There's been a convenience store suggested there. And whether or not they're going to decide on the design for that is up to, that's their business, not mine. But I would like to see it developed and keep it historically appealing to make it a quaint little town that when people pull in, this is Harwich, this is the town that we like, this is the town that we want to see when we pull in, so that we, you know, when people pull in, they get the right impression of the town.
Thank you. Michael?
I'll start with Harwichport. My biggest vision at this point is harmony between the businesses and the neighbors. Figuring out that balance so that we're not impacting the neighbors with extra noise. But Harwichport is chugging along. I think that there's been a great job done down there. Most of the spaces are full. So I think Harwichport, the vision is coming to light. I think we're doing very well in Harwichport. Harwich Center is a historic district. There's also very, very limited expansion that can happen in Harwich Center. So other than a much nicer streetscape and doing some work on the existing structures, I don't really see how we can do a whole lot of development in Harwich Center. Certainly the streetscape needs to be improved, and we have tasked the Harwich Center Initiative Committee to come up with ideas for Harwich Center, and we're waiting for those to come back.
Thank you. The next question, we're beginning with Tom. It's two questions, I'm combining both, so it's about town meeting. Please tell me one thing you will do to unite the town after a divided town meeting. And the other is, what was your biggest takeaway from the 2019 annual town meeting? How do you think the discussions there will shape our town's actions and priorities in the coming years?
Well, I think this, of all the town meetings I've been to since we moved in here, this is one of the better, if not the best town meeting I've been to. People got up, they were not afraid to get up and voice their opinion. Oftentimes in the past, people would get up and they'd be very nervous at the podiums. When you're in front of the whole town, you're trying to express your opinion. It's daunting. But people were passionate enough this time to get up there and really say what they wanted to do, which really encourages me for the future of Harwich. It's time that we got up and we got our town back. It's our town, okay? No matter who you elect for selectmen, we should be working for you. It's your town, and you suggest, and we will work for you. We're supposed to represent you, not lead you. We should represent you. So I think the biggest takeaway I got was the fact that the town is starting to come alive, starting to voice their opinion, not afraid to get up and say, hey, I don't like this. And, you know, let the chips fall where they may. They're not afraid to be, you know, be booed or whatever from the crowd, that they will get up there and say, there's something wrong, let's fix it. So that was my biggest takeaway, and I'm very happy and very proud of this town that they got up and expressed their opinions.
Thank you. Michael?
I would agree with that. I think my takeaway was they're tired. They want enough is enough, and they want to stop spending money. They want the budget to go down. They want projects to be more carefully thought out, better planning. And in general, you know, the pet cemetery was that caused a huge divide, I think, in the town. And I think there was a lot of misinformation throughout the process. I think that the 2016 town meeting voted for it, and there was a lot of things that were done wrong. The group got together, followed the rules, put a petition article in, and overwhelmingly defeated it. So for me, it's listening to the people, and again, I'm very happy with how town meeting went and the fact that people stood up and finally voted no on some things.
Thank you. Steve?
Well, I think I said earlier I was disappointed in what happened in town meeting. Not in the fact that people came and spoke their minds, because people have come and spoke their minds since the beginning of town meeting in the town of Harwich. So any implication that you know, people haven't had a chance or haven't stood up and spoke their minds over the many, many years that this town has been in existence is just incorrect. I feel there's a certain incivility that has gotten into the bloodstream of this town, whether it's at town meeting, whether it's at selectmen's meetings, and we have to find a solution for that, because this is no way to run a town. We have to have a town that has a foundation that's based on collaboration, not on confrontation. That's not what it's about. And the only way that we can accomplish the types of things that Michael and Tom talk about is if we do it in a collaborative fashion, working together, We did it for many, many years in this town, and I think we can return to that. But I was disappointed.
I'm going to do one final question. It's just a yes or no, knowing that there's other information out there. We have many other questions here that we didn't get to, but I'm very pleased to say that we've done over 15 questions for all of you. And I know there's more explanation to this, but it's a question about Airbnb. Are you interested in pursuing Airbnb tax? Yes or no? And we'll start with Michael.
Yes. Is this do I have 2 minutes? I'll
No.
answer with a yes, but is this a, because I wanted to go
No,
back to
it's just
some
a
of the
yes
other-
or no.
Yeah,
Because then
yes.
you can, if you want in your closing statements, which will begin shortly, you can certainly bring that up if you wish. Steve, yes or
Yes.
no? Tom?
Yes.
Thank you all. And thank you, audience. Before they do their final commentary, I'd like to thank all of you for being so polite and civic-minded, not only for coming out, but for allowing everyone to speak without any commentary from the audience or clapping to delay things. So thank you all. And so in order to go, as I was supposed to go appropriately in the beginning, we'll have closing statements, and they are a minute and a half up to that period of time. I'm hoping all three of you can stay around, especially during the 5-minute break in case anyone wants to ask you additional questions, or I know you're all available by email, phone, or text. Please feel free to contact them. We'll begin with Tom, your closing statement.
Well, there's a lot of hard questions in town, and I don't have the answers. And I don't think these gentlemen have the answers either. All we can do is make a decision based on intelligence guided by experience. And we need to listen. There needs to be an open communication between the town and the Board of Selectmen. We need to hear what you want us to do. As your selectman, I will always listen and keep an open mind, ready to accept new information and formulate new opinions as the situation warrants. I am beholden to no one. I have no special interest, and I seek no personal gain outside of the satisfaction of a job well done. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Michael?
Just thank you all for coming, and thank you for the thoughtful questions, and I'm certainly available to answer any questions. Thank the League of Women Voters and the Voter Information Committee for putting this on. I would really appreciate your vote, and I would like to continue to work for you in the town of Harwich. I just wanted to go back real quick on 2 items. First, on the moderator's picks of the Finance Committee. By no means was I putting down anyone that's on there now. I think it's time to go in a new direction, and I think town meeting spoke, and that we should go in a new direction. So that's my comments on that, not that anyone's doing a bad job. And then Lower County Road, $1.4 million is what we give the DPW director in Chapter 90 matching funds and the $700,000 debt exclusion every year. So out of that $1.4 million, they were going to take $1 million out this year to put to that project. Last night, the Board of Selectmen voted $338,000 for chip sealing. And there was mention of a meeting between Lincoln Hooper, DPW director, and Chris Clark, and they decided not to go forward with anything. But if we have that $1.4 million, why aren't we having the conversation of what portion of that we can put into that road now? But thank you again, and I would appreciate your vote.
Thank you. Steve?
My thanks as well to the League of Women Voters and to the Voter Information Committee for arranging this forum. I think these forums are so vitally important to all of us to see the quality and depth of knowledge and experience that the candidates have. I'm hopeful you've been able to see from my answers what my qualifications are. I think it's a unique set of qualifications coming both from government and from banking. It's a time when most people are very concerned about the budget, and certainly my background lends itself very well to that. I hope to be able to utilize my skills to help the town. Again, as I said, I think there are a number of good things that we could do right off the bat by taking a look at what some of our neighbors are doing relative to how they show the budget to the people of the town. I think that's, we got to address those kind of issues before we can even attack the most major issues, bringing people into the town to really share in how we make our decisions. So I would ask you to, on May the 21st, cast your vote for me, and I will go out there and try to make the kind of changes and improve the good situations we have today in any way that I can. Thank you.
Thank you. And we also ask that you also do your part as citizens by voting on May 21st. At this time, I'd like you to give these candidates a nice round of applause. We're going to take a 5-6 minute break before we start the next forum, which would be the school committee forum.